This is Stephen Spender with ideaXme, and today we are talking to filmmaker Charlotte Knowles. Hey, Charlotte.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Is that a filmmaker? Is that an accurate description of who you are?
Yeah, I would say that's an accurate description of who I am. I think, well, it's an accurate description of part of what I do, I guess. So, my background is in documentary, and I've been working with journalists and film producers for a number of years, working on a sort of wide variety of film projects for TV and for cinema and for the online platforms. And now I also do a lot of other work in addition to that. So I work with the Independent Film Trust, and we do a lot of work around advocating for independent film production in the UK, supporting other independent film producers in the UK, and also helping to take filmmaking into places where people maybe have something really interesting and important to say but are marginalized, and we feel that filmmaking is a really, really great way in which people can kind of express themselves. So we take really basic filmmaking into places to enable people to tell their own stories. So it's kind of broad what I
Right.
do, I guess, but that's probably the best way of packaging it.
And how did you get into film or documentary or journalism?
Yeah, good question. Well, I actually started out as an actress as a
Okay.
teenager,
Yeah.
and I was in kids' TV shows for a number of years, and then I moved away to France to be in a play, and I was in a film, and then eventually got a little bit frustrated and wanted to really be working behind the scenes. And by that point, I'd really sort of built up a love of documentary and factual filmmaking and journalism, and decided that really what I wanted to do was be able to work sort of all over the world. And I felt that a more effective way of doing that would be to learn languages in order to be able to work in places and communicate with people in their mother tongue as best I could. So I studied languages. But all the while throughout my studies, I was working. I had built up sort of a number of contacts by that point, having worked in television for 6 years prior to going to university. So I was working all throughout my studies, and worked in China for a bit, worked in Italy for a while, then came back to the UK, and that's when I started working in documentary for different feeder companies making films for BBC4.
How was that decision? Like once you decided to, I don't know if you decided to leave acting, or was that sort of like you were finished with that and now I'm going to go on to be behind the camera, or did it just sort of evolve?
I guess it's sort of, I mean, the life of an actor is really hard and it's really brutal, on your self-esteem. And I sort of felt that I just didn't really want my whole life to be sort of shaped by, what I looked like and what my voice sounded like, and things that I felt were sort of really superficial and unimportant to who I was. But
Yeah.
all of those aspects are vitally important to, an actor's life. And I just felt like it just wasn't really for me. It just wasn't really where my interests were anymore. And my parents are both performers, so that was kind of a natural step for me as
Right.
a child. But growing up and becoming sort of an adult in my own right and becoming sort of my own person, I guess, when you're in your teens, sort of grew away from that, and was more interested basically in other people and less interested in my own kind of stuff. Kind of wanted to find out other people's stories and to be able to talk about them, and I was just interested in the world and finding out about what was going on in the world, and I wanted to do that in a more direct way, and I felt that, I suppose, factual storytelling was the way to do it.
So it says in your bio that you're a factual filmmaker. Does
Mm-hmm.
that mean like a documentary filmmaker, or is that different from
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So factual film is, it's interesting because the concept of what is fact is sort of broadly debated. But factual filmmaking basically is documentary. It can also be, I don't do reality television, but it could also be sort of reality television to a certain extent.
Right.
But factual filmmaking is a sort of a better term for me because I'm interested in the sort of variety of ways in which factual stories can be told, and the different creative mediums in which you can tell them, so whether that's through interactive storytelling or through, participatory storytelling where the people that you're interviewing become part of the filmmaking process themselves. And I like to kind of experiment with the different ways in which those stories can be told. So, and documentary is one way in which that can happen, but there are a number of other ways. So yeah, I like to experiment and explore those different ways of telling stories, and also the different ways in which other people can be involved in the storytelling process. I mean, my feeling is that I love films, I love cinema, and that's my passion in life, but it doesn't always have to be me making it. I love people's films just as much making them.
Yeah.
So, and I also like to involve other people in the process when I'm making something, because ultimately a film is always a collaborative process, and it's a little bit misleading the way it always gets communicated. You know, you hear who the director was of a film, and you hear who the main actors were in a film. You rarely know who produced it. You rarely know who's in cinematography or the editing, or, you know, who was the gaffer. But all of these people are just as important. You feel that when you're in the process. You know, you never feel, as a director, I don't think you feel more, or you shouldn't anyway, feel more important than everybody else, because everybody else is just as relevant to that experience. So yeah, and I just much prefer a collaborative process.
You're also teaching, right? So you're going, what is it called? Film School in a Box?
The Film School in a Box is a project that was set up to go into places where people are marginalized for any particular reason. And that might be for, you know, because people have been through the criminal justice system, or people have got mental health issues, or because people have learning challenges, or whatever it is, any reason why, you know, people are sort of often excluded from a kind of mainstream idea of society. And so we go into a number of different places and take basic filmmaking in, so that people can learn to use filmmaking as a way of communicating their own stories, but also because the films themselves become a catalyst for creating conversations within local communities. Right. So at the end of every Film School in a Box, we run a screening in which we invite the local community to engage in discussions and Q&As around the films on screen that have been made by the participants on the course. And that's really important, because for a lot of people who take part in the course, that's sometimes the first time that anybody has ever said to them, you know, I really want to know what you think about this. And for some people on the course, that's a big eye-opener, because they haven't had that experience before, where someone's been really interested in what they think about something and why they decided to communicate it in a certain way. So that kind of using the films as a catalyst in that way for communities to be able to come together and address challenges or problems or issues in their local environment is really powerful, and can be really empowering for people who, until that point, had sort of felt that there wasn't really a place for them. So it can kind of start to alter the way in which people see their own role in society, which is ultimately the goal of that project.
Wow. There's so much I want to ask you. What does a typical day look like for you these days?
Okay, typical day. There is no such thing as a typical day. That's the first thing. Yeah. Okay, I'll explain to you what today is like. Okay. And then what tomorrow is like, and you'll see the difference. Okay. So today, got very early. I had a breakfast meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning, talking about public relations and communications for the Independent Film Trust and ways in which we can help communicate out the projects that we're doing to get more people involved. I then came back to my office. I started talking to people about fundraising and talking to some volunteers about ways in which volunteers can get involved in some of the projects that we're doing. I then spoke to another arts institution in London about a talk that I'm going to go and give about independent film production in the UK and distribution. Now I'm talking to you. Yep. I'm doing a podcast recording, talking about the work that I do. And then when I come off of this, I have a meeting with a team that I'm producing a film with to talk about the next stages in that film. And then in the afternoon, I'll be editing a film that I've been working on for a few months and organising a few additional interviews for that. And I'll probably finish work about 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening. Tomorrow, wow. I'll get up in the morning and I will have another meeting, again about another film production that I'm involved in. Then I'm going to drive to Leicester because we have, from our lab project last year, we invited 15 filmmakers to come in for a really prolonged period of mentoring and career development work. And one of those film artists is having their premiere of their film that they made during this process. And it's in Leicester, and they have a big exhibition. They're going to be exhibiting a lot of their artwork, and they're going to be screening their film. So I'm going to go to the screening and talk a little bit about the mentoring process. and support that filmmaker and hopefully celebrate, because it was a massive sort of upheaval for them to get this off the ground. And so, we want to support them and celebrate them. So that's the kind of difference in the sort of things that I'm working on all the time.
Wow.
It could be like anything, and it involves a lot of traveling around. It involves a lot of talking to loads of people about loads of different things. And that's just kind of the nature of this.
What do you enjoy most about your job? Like, what excites you?
I think what excites me the most probably is making some kind of difference. For me, I didn't really get involved in film because I love making. Like, I don't love the production element of it so much, or I don't love the actual, like a lot of people, they love the cinematography, or they love that's not the bit that does it for me so much. The bit that does it for me is being able to identify a story that people are perhaps not as aware of, and tell a side to it that people didn't know, and present people with another possibility that hasn't really been considered, and start to kind of alter people's perceptions and ultimately try and improve things for people for whom things are difficult. That for me is why film is really fascinating. I think it just has the most phenomenal potential to enable us to kind of reflect on ourselves and reflect on our place in the world and what we're doing as a society or as a kind of global people to sort of interact with one another in a positive way. And I think that it's vitally important that independent filmmakers are have that space to be able to do that, because I think they have a really important role in society in being able to provide that cultural reflection and cultural communication of who we are as a people. And I think that, reflection process is really, really important. And I don't think that we can never almost get too much of it, I think. So that for me is the bit that excites me. But the actual, like, the jobs in the day, the parts of my day where that is really happening is when I'm out meeting people and I'm finding out people's stories, or finding out, about people's lives and how people are living in different parts of the world, and finding out stories that can be communicated about that, and researching, or I'm just meeting people like you and I'm talking to you about, what we're doing, or I'm hearing about what you're doing, understanding how we could potentially be working together. Those are the bits to meet people, find out about people and collaborate with people. That's the bit that I really love.
I guess this will probably be the final question. If you could meet anyone, living or non-living, who would that be? And what would you like to ask them?
This is so difficult. How many people would you want to? I would want to meet so many people.
I know, it's tough.
It's really, really tough. I think it would probably be somebody from the past, and I don't know. I have two sort of sticking out in my mind.
Okay.
So I'm just going to take two, and I don't care.
That's allowed. That's allowed.
So I would probably go back and meet Alfred Hitchcock, and I would ask him if I could just follow him around.
Yeah.
So that I could just learn everything that he did. And similarly, I'd probably want to meet Frida Kahlo, the artist, Mexican artist, and I would just ask if I could be her best friend. Lovely.
Okay, I think we're finished here. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. No, it's lovely to see you, Stephen. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.